Well, you haven't heard from me in a while, I know, so I better say something. As you know, I relocated a few months ago to the Baltics, and I am working full time here, which means I have a lot less time to produce videos or do live streams or anything like that, and that's why you don't see that much of me right now. But let's have a quick look at things going on in the world. First of all, I like to tell you that in case anyone wonders, I am still uh, I'm still opposed to Islam. I'm very much opposed to Islam, and that's not going to change anytime soon. If you take a look at the history of Islam and Islam's present, its teachings, and how it is practiced, there is no way to come up with any other conclusion than to be opposed to it. We're seeing what's happening in Western Europe, we're seeing what's happening in Canada, even in Australia, I think, and this is nothing new. If you look at what's been going on historically, and I'm going to go give you the shortest recap I can have out of my mind here. Islam started with this warlord Muhammad back in the early 7th century. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure that's what it was. And after he had to flee Mecca and went to Medina, he eventually established his own little principality or kingdom or whatever you want to call it. He was both a political and a religious leader, and then this Islamic empire started expanding. They expanded into all over the Middle East, into North Africa, the Mediterranean area. They conquered the Iberian Peninsula. And if you ever heard of anything called the Iberian Paradise or something like that, well, it's a lie. Life under Islam in the Iberian Peninsula was not good at all. Christians and Jews were treated as second-class citizens, and even though, as far as I understand, Muslims were never the majority population in that part of the world, they were still running the show. I don't see any reason to believe things would be different in Sweden, if Sweden becomes Islamic, or in Canada, or in Australia, or for that matter, in Brazil or the United States or anywhere else in the world. I mean, we can see it on what's going on in places like, for instance, Nigeria, with the slaughter of Christians done by Muslims. And before I leave this Islam trail, I'll just tell you that, of course, Europe has historically, we've been Islam's neighbors, so Central and Eastern Europe, they have their history, and that's why these countries, the Visegrad countries, have a better understanding of why open borders, especially towards the Islamic world, is a bad idea. But that's not all. A few hundred years ago, for instance, Swedish sailors were kidnapped by Islamic pirates, and they were brought into slavery in North Africa. Actually, there were money collected in churches in Sweden to buy them back to freedom. And of course, they weren't the only ones. They were one example. And you know about the slave trade. The transatlantic slave trade was a horrible sin. And eventually some Christians did whatever they could to stop it, and it was eventually outlawed in the British Empire. It was outlawed in the United States of America after they had a horrible civil war to end this inhuman practice. But have you heard about what is called the Arabic slave trade, which was actually an Islamic slave trade, although, well, since a lot of the slave traders were Arabs, it's usually called the Arab slave trade. They would take slaves from Africa all the way over to the Middle East. They castrated the men, so a lot of them died, and that was not outlawed by Islam in any way because Muhammad himself had slaves. It was eventually outlawed because of pressure from Western countries. And you know what happened after the fall of the Gaddafi regime? And I'm not going to defend Gaddafi because he was a horrible and brutal dictator. But what happened after that country was destabilized and the regime fell? Well, now you can buy black slaves in Libya. And I mean, it's horrible, but that's what you can do. And apart from that, there's one other thing I want to mention in this short, I guess, Monday update or whatever you want to call it. Because I usually have Mondays off, so I'll do this today, and we'll see if I do it again next Monday. Anyway, Sweden. Sweden has now almost 4,000 confirmed deaths, last time I checked, earlier this morning, in COVID-19. The Swedish strategy is is herd immunity. Even Trump mentioned it. He said they call it the flock, which is correct. In Swedish it's flockimmunitet, herd immunity. And a lot of the people dying in Sweden are old people, and they are not given proper care. They're just trying to kill them off. They give them morphine. They don't give them what they're supposed to give them. They don't give them any air. They just give them morphine. So they pretty much kill them off. And a lot of countries in Europe are now slowly trying to open up. They're starting to open up. But you know which country is not invited to this opening up party? Sweden. Because Sweden has turned into the kid with lice that doesn't get invited to parties anymore. Cyprus is opening up to a lot of countries, including Denmark and Norway. But Swedish citizens are not allowed to travel there. Denmark and Finland are talking about opening up, but they are both talking about that they don't want to open up towards Sweden because it's too risky. So yeah, Sweden is just turning into the kid with lice that doesn't get invited to parties. So that's some of the things going on in my world right now, or I mean the things on top of my head. And I just wanted you to know that I haven't forgotten about this thing. I'm still doing this YouTube channel, although at a slower pace than I did before, because I have a lot less time on my hands right now. Anyway, just keep tuned, and hey, be safe, don't do anything stupid, and thank you for watching. Have a great week, and God bless.